I'm Michael Reese.
And I'm Woods Davis.
And this is the Digital President Podcast.
We've cracked the code for generating customers online for every business model.
In fact, we wrote the book on it.
We've built multiple multi-million-dollar businesses in as little as 90 days. And the one truth that we discovered is
the best business model is doing what you love and living your life by strategy.
You truly can follow your passion and create the life of your dreams,
as long as you have the right strategy.
If you're a real estate agent and you'd like to learn how you can partner with us to help you implement our strategies and systems in your business so you can make a lot more money and have a lot more time freedom, all without ever paying us a penny or giving up a percentage of your commission, go to partnershipdetails.com and schedule a call with us today. While it's fresh in your mind, go to partnershipdetails.com. Now on to the podcast.
So I think the problem is that, the reason why agents don't have consistency and lack productivity is not because the market or the opportunity is not there. I think it's just their ability to manage themselves. And I think that comes down to understanding the 9 box, like literally understanding the 9 box. And we're going to put an image up here of the 9 box. This is the 9 box. And understanding that the real estate business has many, many different functions. And some of those functions are revenue generating activities and some are not. Some are servicing a sale. And so, man, I think we should really discuss, what are the revenue generating activities, real estate agents that are selling real estate every single day, what things should they be focused on and why? And some of those different decision filters to help somebody really realign their day to increase their productivity and ultimately get a little bit more predictability in their business.
Well, I can tell you my first thought is going to be a little bit counterintuitive, and because I think that a lot of people skip this step. And I would actually say that a revenue generating activity is actually strategy. So I believe that not a lot of agents spend enough time working on the business because they get too busy working in the business. And I think that that's where, when you start with strategy, you mentioned the 9 box. The 9 box is a strategic framework for looking at the business. It gives you clarity on identifying revenue generating activities and then making sure that those revenue generating activities live in the calendar, that there's a daily discipline that is aligned to making money, the things that are going to make money, not just service a sale. And so it's just interesting because I believe a lot of people skip that step. Monday for us, we devote specific time to strategy, to working on the business. And that helps you just take yourself outside of it and get clear on, identifying what is my plan to make sure that I'm going to hit my goals. What are the revenue generating activities that are going to drive those goals? How am I going to know if I'm being successful? What are the numbers and how am I going to track that success? So for me, I think that's a starting point, is just getting really clear on a strategy, knowing where the revenue generating activities are going to fall in the calendar and how they align to the overall plan.
Yeah, absolutely. Because strategy is going to give you the direction to deploy resources. And the thing is that you only have so many resources. And in theory, those resources are limited in nature. You're limited in time, you're limited in money. And so I think the strategic question that you have to ask yourself, and first of all, I think strategy is the highest leverage activity because you can go fast in the wrong direction, right? You can, and there's a balance here because, what I'm not saying, strategy is not perfectionism. Strategy is validating your strategy is making sure that you're solving the right problem. Okay. So what I mean is you can wake up on Monday morning this week, and there's certainly tons of things that you could do. And some of the things that you could do, you have a limit. You got a limit of the things you can do. You have a limit of what you can invest time and money into. So in the art of strategy, you're actually identifying the things that you're going to say, no, I'm not doing those things. So when it comes to the 9 box, being strategic would be, saying as a high leverage activity, hey man, I got to put some signs out this week. I know this isn't the problem for most people, but I'm using it as a form of demonstration of the framework for thinking. So like, I got to put signs out, right? Well, you don't change the outcome in putting a sign out. Now in Texas, I do, because the ground gets pretty dang hard in the summer, and I can tell you, I've had people go try to put signs out where they did need to get some help. But in lieu of those situations, for the most part, a sign is not going to change the outcome. Now, there's a difference. Let's take putting out a sign. It's not putting out a sign. It's building a process, right? So for instance, let's say that when you put out a sign, that's a variable activity. So it's a variable expense. A sign doesn't go out every day. It only goes out when you get a listing, right? And so the good news is that understanding that, wait, I only put a sign out when I service a sale, when I'm trying to take someone who's paid me, employed me, my professional services to help them get their home sold. I have to put a sign out. I got to make a property brochure. I got to put something in the MLS. Those types of things can be delegated, right? Now, you might be come from the school of thought, and I do know people like this, and this is not me, but I could make the same argument that, okay, well, I write the best copy. No, you need to have guidelines and systems for writing copy for your listings descriptions. It doesn't mean that you have to do them. The question is if I wasn't going to do them, if it wasn't going to be me, then what things would need to be true in order for me to delegate this to someone else and get the most possible outcome? Someone else can get it 90% there. Maybe your HLA, high leverage activity, your revenue generating activity is reviewing those things, right? Like reviewing that, or maybe your job is to take really good notes on the key attributes of the home that you want to be included. So for me, when I went to listing, my process, which again, I created, which is a revenue generating activity, and the reason it's revenue generating is because my people are more efficient with their time and produce the outcome and don't have to do things over, and I have to pay them for their time. So if somebody is going to be an editor, is there an editing guideline? If someone's going to put out a deal like a sign for me, what is the process of what that looks like? Do they come by the office and I'm not there? Or do they schedule a time to come pick up the sign? Do they have access to the sign in the storage room? Do they get notified of the sign and then get notified of the brochure later? Or should they come when the signs and brochures are being made? Does that mean the pictures need to be taken? Does that mean that we're going to have a temporary brochure, which is what we did? We had a temporary brochure because the brochures that are going to get picked up are going to be the most when the sign goes out. And we don't want to delay the sign going out. In fact, we want a coming soon sign go out. So we would always have a temporary brochure that went out because we understood strategically how impactful that was. Well, laying out your core processes in your business so that you can delegate them to someone else and generate the outcomes and service the sell is a strategic effort, right? You're nailing your core processes so that you can scale your business, and nailing those are strategic. However, other people, when they look at their business, they're reactive, right? Their week is going to be dictated by what they see on Facebook, what emails they get, who calls them, and those things are going to impact their day. My suggestion, and this has always been my suggestion, is you should put the rocks in your calendar. So my ideal situation is drop in the rocks that are going to be when you're going to do your revenue generating activities, right? For me, the things that I do that change the outcome, that have the highest impact on the cause and effect relationship on where we're trying to go, that produce the most revenue, for me, those activities are better to be done in the morning than the end of the day. So what I like to do is lay those out in the beginning of the day, which again, putting that time in, like Woods was saying, to work on the business versus in the business. In the business is when you're in the business, you're doing a function. I'm going on a listing appointment, right? Working on the business would be like, okay, how do we handle listing appointments when they don't show up? Do we just write it down and randomly call them back 2 or 3 times? Do we send them a text? Do we send them a video? Do we send them a link in an email with the text with the link to reschedule it? What is the process? Does somebody call them? However, what is that? What does that process look like? So for me, I'm going to put in my calendar that, and I'm going to name it really, like, this is my priority for the week. My job on Monday is to get clear on what I'm doing and then to drop those things, those rocks in my calendar. So again, if I'm a listing agent, then I'm going to put my availability to go on listings. That doesn't mean that if I have a gentleman who's flying in and he's only going to be able to meet me at 7:00 at night, that I'm not going to take that listing appointment. But what it does mean is that when my ISA makes a call and gets someone on the phone, he's going to have my availability to do that activity. And 9 out of 10 times, he's going to be able to use his sales skills to articulate to the prospect, and coordinate with the prospect a good time for us to meet based upon my availability and theirs. So that is, how strategy implies. Now, when you look at revenue generating activities, I think for the most part, what we're saying is that things that shouldn't be overlooked, right? One revenue generating activity for me, and this isn't for everybody, but it was for me, was getting price reductions, right? And so what is your system for reducing the price? And for me, that system this is me. This is what I learned. I learned that price reductions, which was my listing inventory balance sheet, and having certain metrics related to when to reduce the price, if articulated to the seller in advance before a price reduction was warranted, that they would be more open to the conversation because they understood the process. Calling someone randomly and saying most price reductions 9 out of 10 times comes when the client calls because they're dissatisfied. That's not the time to have that conversation. That's reactive. Proactive would be, hey, Mrs. Seller, what we're going to do is we're going to set you up so you're notified every time a home sells in your neighborhood or within a quarter of a mile of yours in what we call a comparable property. And right now, here's the months of inventory. Here's the pending ratio. What we have to assume, if X amount of homes actually sell from the time that your home's on the market and we get X amount of viewings, then that means people have looked at your house and not chosen your house. And if they're not choosing your house, it's because they can buy a similar house with better features and benefits, which means they're getting a house with a higher perception of value. And those features might not be dollar for dollar. They just might be a better lot, might be a 1 acre lot, a bigger lot, a bigger garage. There might be things that you're competing with. And so the way that you're going to compete is we have to continue to get more views on the property, right? And so pricing your home is very important. And I want you to understand how the market communicates to us when we price the home wrong. Here's what should happen. If we're getting showings and we're not getting offers, then at some point we have to consider a price reduction. And here's what that's going to look like. At the end of the first 30 days, and now I'm just future pacing them, right? Mm-hmm. And they're agreeing to the principles. They still see homes are selling in 6 days. There's, only 21 days of inventory. But at day 30, if they understood that and their home hasn't sold, and the price that when the market has shifted or the price that we had agreed on, we were wrong, right? We miscalculated. We didn't know after we put the home on the market, 4 other homes were going to go on that same weekend. Our home is going to depreciate in the perception of value, and it's going to attract a lower offer. And it's a lot easier to get full price the higher the offer because there's less negotiating. So if we know that the home is going to depreciate in perceived value, we want to attract an offer quickly. And we also know that 81% of the homes that do sell in the first 30 days, right? And so I just gave them the information up front. That was after the listing agreement signed. I'd fold the folder up, shake their hand, tell them I was excited, and I'd say, oh yeah, one last thing. Let me tell you about the process and one thing that we're going to do together. And then I would explain it to them. And so price reductions, those are going to be a high leverage activity.
So what's interesting is I just literally had this same conversation on the buy side. So right now it's more important than ever, especially when we're in especially if you're in a really hot market and you're in a very super low inventory environment, to have a similar strategy to prepare buyers to be able to make offers and have a system that is going to get your offers accepted. So at the end of the day, the scenario that you were laying out was for a seller, obviously, to be able to optimize, work the system to get the price, that's going to actually get the property sold, because obviously that's a revenue generating activity. It's going to generate commission. It's great to be able to generate a client and have a buyer that you're showing homes to, but if they can't win an offer right now in a very competitive market, then that becomes a big problem. That becomes a bottleneck that you have to solve in a revenue generating activity for getting a system around preparing your buyers to be able to present offers, and you having a system in the way that you work and negotiate in order to get those offers approved is paramount right now. So I literally have same exact example. So one little system that one of my agents down in Southwest Florida, we were talking about, and I kind of helped give them the positioning for the strategy. It was very similar. It was showing, here's all the properties that have sold in this price range over the 90 days. This was the list price. This is what they were selling for above the list price. This just happens to be in Southwest Florida, where markets are, people got to go in, $50,000, $100,000, even multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars in some of these multi-million-dollar properties above the asking price, above the list price, in order to win the deal. So giving them that data up front, preparing them for what the expectations, setting the expectations up front of what's going to be required in order to do that. And then here's the process that we're going to use with the agents, that I use with the agents, in order to help us identify what the best offer is that we can put in and get on the table, so we have the highest likelihood of getting offers accepted. So getting a system around that is super, super important right now. And I'm glad that you brought that up, because I think that a lot of times too, when we think about revenue generating activities, we think about, at least my mind usually goes to like lead generation, client, prospecting, getting conversations with clients. And I think we can maybe talk about that a little bit, because I do think that is a high leverage activity. But the reality is like the rubber doesn't hit the road until we close a deal, right? And so if there's a bottleneck at the end of the funnel, like if there's a bottleneck that's closest to the dollar, you want to solve that bottleneck first. So you open up the throughput.
That's called low-hanging fruit. Like when you're prioritizing the things that you can do, the very first thing that you can do is write down all of the current things that you do to produce revenue. And when you write all the things that you do to produce revenue, obviously, if someone's already employed you to sell their home, or someone's already approved to buy a home and they just can't find the home, then removing that bottleneck. A lot of the times, you are right. I mean, if 90% of the people that listen to this call are not having enough conversations, period. And if you are having enough conversations and you're still not producing the results, then you don't have the right value proposition. But both of those are revenue generating activities. So if I'm in a situation and I'm working on my business, the first thing I'm going to start with is the value proposition, because it's going to impact everything. It's going to impact the words I use. And the value proposition would be, am I going to have risk reversal? Am I going to have guarantees? What are the things that I'm going to do? So your message to the marketplace, to a seller and a buyer, is extremely important, because it's going to, that's the difference in having a great testimonial and a good testimonial, right? If you're making a promise to the marketplace that's differentiated, and you're doing it in a way that that you have proof and examples, then you're giving yourself the ability to deploy, a marketing campaign that is going to be a revenue generating activity. If you're deploying marketing dollars with a bad marketing message, then that's not a revenue generating activity. That's called a revenue losing activity, right? A revenue generating activity is looking around the strategic messaging in your marketing, and that's the highest revenue generating activity you can do. If your bottleneck is, listen, I don't have any listings, I don't have any buyers, I'm looking at this customer journey, and it's like, okay, Mike, I have, and this can I give you one that I learned that's ours? One of the number one revenue generating activities that me and Woods have is total emails sent for the month, right? And so total emails sent for the month, that is a metric that Grant Cardone tracks. That's a metric that he boasts about, right? And so videos posted, right? That's another metric that is important. That's a metric that we track. We've tracked emails sent off and on, at different times, with I guess a little bit more intention, because sometimes you can get too in the weeds. And so having a goal like, hey, listen, I got 5,000 people in my database. My goal is to send 80,000 emails a month, right? And understanding that as a goal, that's a revenue generating activity, because when you send it, now again, what the headline of the email is, what you're sending, the purpose of your email, the call to action in an email, the landing page that they're going to, you can shoot a video with nothing in the description. You can shoot a video with around the topic with no keyword, or you can understand that doing your keyword research, making sure you have a congruent and compelling offer to make somebody. Those are usually the bottlenecks of people that have no leads. People have no leads because they have no offers. When you have no compelling offers, you have no conversations. If you're having conversations but they're not converting, then obviously you need a better strategy for conversion, and that might be by creating a marketing campaign that includes, but it's not limited to, video. What type of video? Video that talks about problems, depending on where they are in the process, or video that talks about solutions or examples, or demonstrates your expertise, or has people validating it by providing proof that what you say you do for them. And so, we don't have any of those. Okay, well, what's the process for getting testimonials? What's the process for getting reviews on Google? Google reviews, putting a system in place for Google reviews is probably one of the best things you can do for your business. I get on a call with a girl. She has 36 deals under contract. Under contract or closed. She ended up doing, let me take that back. She did 54, but 36 came from Google reviews. And I asked her before she told me that, I said, well, she was like, I don't know. I don't know what I would help anybody with. I was like, well, how many deals did you do? 54? Well, where did the bulk of them come from? Google? What do you mean? You run ads on Google? No, they all come from my Google review. Well, what do you mean? Well, I got the most reviews in my market, right? Well, how did you do that, right? Like that is considered a high leveraged activity for her. And so a lot of the times you can find high leverage activities by reverse engineering the success of other people. And to do that, it's simply by getting around other people that are more successful than you. So for me, my highest leverage activity to date, quantified, take everything, is learning, and specifically learning at conferences, period. Because at a conference, I can be in the presence of the person who's sharing the wisdom and get the answers quickly. It's different than watching a video on a course versus, being at a hotel with somebody who is already applied. They have the application of implementing an ISA, right? They have the employment agreement. They've other people who failed. I can network around that. So when I go to a conference, what I did was I looked backwoods and I said, what are the things that have impacted my business the most over the last 5 years? And I said, this. I said, if you take any of these 5 decisions away, my business wouldn't remotely be the same. Well, all 5 of those are decisions, right? They were all 5 decisions that I had to make. Well, how would I have identified these decisions faster, made them faster? Most of my identifying are execution of the decisions. And when I say identifying, I mean I got awareness around the problem that I didn't know that was a problem, or I knew it was a problem, but I had no concept of a solution, or the solution I had in place, my perception was wrong and it was doable, but because of my perception, I thought it wasn't doable. So I had a limiting belief, right? All of that stuff I work out at big events. That's why they say big decisions happen at big events, whether that's a big decision to start your YouTube, whether that's a big decision to hire an ISA, whether that's a big decision to change real estate brokerages. And so a lot of the times, if you can look retroactively at your business and say, what are the things that have allowed me to make the biggest decisions in my business? Because ultimately, the decision to do something or not do something that's going to produce revenue is at the core, right? That goes back to the strategy question. That doesn't mean that once you make that decision, like at the end of the day, if you don't have anybody to talk to wants to get pre-approved to buy a home in the market you serve, or if you don't have anybody that's looking to put their home for sale, then you have a bottleneck at the top, and your biggest revenue generating activity is being able to identify the bottleneck, produce the solutions and be able to define the problem, and then seek out all of the different ways that you can do that, prioritize it, and then take action on it, and then rinse and repeat. And that's going to apply in marketing. That's going to apply in with the current customers that you already have. That is the process. And that's why strategy, life by strategy, that's why it will always be the highest leverage activity. Even taking one step farther back of a step is that if you do all of that, if you do everything strategically on your business, but you do it under the wrong model, right? Or you do it in the wrong way. Let's say that you skip the step of strategy and then you randomly hire an ISA, which is what somebody's told me the other day, and you do it because it's a friend of yours. You wanted to do it for a long time. Now you know one person who needs a job, and so you're thinking about hiring that person for that job versus obeying the laws of hiring, which is if you're going to hire someone, let all the people apply for the job and hire the best candidate, right? And so you're usually people are not finding the time to do it right, but they have to do it over. And the worst thing that can happen is your strategy is something that should have worked, not work, because of your lack of investing the time up front to get it right and versus getting it done. And so I think all the time that your biggest decisions, your biggest revenue decisions, where you invest your time, energy, and effort, what choices you decide to make, and the things that you decide to do or decide not to do is always going to trump. The bottom line is, guys, listen, you're either creating a sale or servicing a sale, and the revenue generating activities are the activities that are going to allow you to make decisions quickly, spending a little time on the front end to give yourself permission of the things that you're not going to do so that you can quiet the noise, reduce and simplify, and get momentum. That means if right now your bottleneck is the top of the funnel, then you need to get really clear around the biggest problem that you have. There's never going to be a higher leveraged activity than getting a clear plan and creating clarity, because that is where action and results live. It does. And just so you know, when you take action, it doesn't mean that you're never going to take the wrong action. It just means that when you take the wrong action, you might learn something that allows you to then be more decisive and be better at prioritizing those decisions. And those decisions over time are going to be what equate to you being successful. So the real question is how do you block out your time and give that and invest your time so that you can get a return on your time in your business? And I think you do that, whether that's on Monday or Sunday or Friday at some point. We like to do that by looking at over the course of the week. And really, once we get down to, what we're going to do and how we are going to invest the time in the business, we do it by getting clear on what we expect to be the result by Friday. And then, what decisions do we need to make? What are our wait stations? And I think that's at the essence of, if you're thinking about your business just transactionally on why I don't have another deal. If you don't have a deal closing or you don't have enough deals closing, it means that you're not investing your time in the right places. That's simply it. 100%. The reason why you don't have a deal today is because the things that you did over the last 90 days were the wrong things. And the truth is that you can then say, okay, why didn't you do those things? And naturally, a lot of people, unfortunately, are going to say all the things that happened to them. And I'm going to challenge you guys. I'm going to challenge you to say, what could I have done differently, right? Don't say, well, I was supposed to get this done or this done, and I didn't get a text message, and I sent a text, so ball wasn't in my court. That's BS. You own extreme ownership. If you haven't read the book, you own your own success, and it can't be truthfully owned. It can only be rented, and the rent's due every day. And there's always something you could have done differently. If you sent a text message to somebody and you're waiting on something, then why didn't you send 3? Why didn't you send 4? Why didn't you call that person? If that's the one thing that held you back from getting to where you wanted to go, if someone would have offered you $1 million to get a hold of that person, what would you have done? You would have done something different. I'm not saying that, an extreme example like that means you need to get on the plane and fly to your website developer's house, but there's certainly one or two things that you could have done better. And when you take ownership of the reason why you're not moving to your goals and you get clear, it's so much more empowering because you're taking account that your success is, you're taking account of your agency and you're saying that success is in my hands, right? Success in my hands. The number one clients that I do not want to work with is people who can't own their own success. They get to own their success. When they're successful, I give them that. I've never said I made somebody successful. I might have worked with someone, I might have helped them think differently, but ultimately they own their success. They did it on their own. And so at the end of the day, my challenge to you would be, take extreme ownership. Ask yourself, man, what could I do differently to get in more conversations? How could I talk to more people? And I don't care what it is. I don't care. And I'm not even endorsing this by any means, but I've done it. If that meant going and knocking on doors in a neighborhood, you're going to talk to more people than making phone calls. Now, you could probably talk to more people making phone calls, but if you have a limiting belief or you have a disempowering belief, or if you have some narrative on why you don't make phone calls and you don't do that, you don't like that, you got to do something, because this is a contact sport. And if you don't contact enough people, then your closings will be relevant. It'll show up there. And if you don't have enough people to contact, ask a better question, right? Because they're just people. They, some shop at Home Depot, some shop at Lowe's, some eat at Popeyes, some eat at Chick-fil-A. They're people, right? They're people. That's all they are. And some of those people are going to sell their home this year and some of them are not. And the only way that you're going to know is by making more contacts. So that's all I got for today, Woods, man. I always appreciate it. Final words?
Man, final words is, focus on the revenue generating activities. Get them in the calendar. Take time to be strategic. Identify them. What are you going to start doing? What are you going to stop doing? I really like what you said about low-hanging fruit. I think that was really powerful. Look for the low-hanging fruit opportunities in your business right now as you're laying out your revenue generating activities. If you want to change something in your life or in your business, you got to change something you do daily. So, making sure that those revenue generating activities are in your calendar every day. And I just appreciate this. It's always a good reminder, this is stuff that we're always doing constantly, in our own business. And I'm just grateful for the opportunity to share it with you guys, and hope you found value in today's episode.